Zoonotic diseases, disease transmitted from animals to humans. A zoonosis, zoonotic disease or zoonoses plural, is an infectious disease that is transmitted between species from animals to humans, or from humans to animals. There are three classes, as follows. Endemic zoonoses, present in many places and affect many people and animals. Epidemic zoonoses, sporadic in temporal and spatial distribution, and emerging and re-emerging zoonoses, newly appearing in a population or have existed previously but are rapidly increasing in incidence or geographical range. Examples of the latter include Rift Valley fever, SARS, pandemic influenza H1N1 2009, yellow fever, avian influenza, H5N1, and H7N9, West Nile virus and the Middle East respiratory syndrome coronavirus, MERS-CoV, reported in the recent past. Zoonotic diseases range from minor short-term illness to a major life-changing illness. Certain ones can even cause death. Types. The types of zoonosis include those caused by a virus, bacteria, fungus, parasites. Examples of zoonotic diseases: animal flu, anthrax, bird flu, bovine tuberculosis, brucellosis, Campylobacter infection, cat scratch fever, cryptosporidiosis, cysticercosis, dengue fever, Ebola, encephalitis from ticks, enzootic abortion, erysipeloid, fish tank granuloma, giardiasis, glanders, hemorrhagic colitis, hepatitis C, hydatid disease, leptospirosis, listeria infection, Lauping Lyme disease, lymphocytic choriomeningitis, malaria, OFF infection, parrot fever, pasteurellosis, plague, Q fever, rabies, ratbite fever, ringworm, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, Salmonella and E. coli infections, streptococcal sepsis, swine flu, toxocariasis, toxoplasmosis, trichinosis, tularemia, West Nile virus, zoonotic diphtheria. How they are transmitted. Zoonoses can be transmitted in various ways. Through the air, by eating contaminated meat or produce, through close contact with an infected animal, by touching an area or surface that an infected animal touched, through insect bites like mosquitoes or ticks. Many transmissions occur when people hike, bike, boat, or enjoy other activities in the great outdoors. Petting zoos are also common places for a zoonotic disease to be transmitted. Those who live and work on farms are in close contact with many types of livestock. Livestock is a common carrier of many zoonoses. Your family pet can carry ticks and fleas indoors that can then move on to you and your family. What to do if you have a zoonotic disease? If you have or think you have a zoonotic disease, you should contact a medical professional as soon as possible. If you're scratched or bitten by an animal, be sure to have the animal thoroughly checked by a veterinarian. This is to make sure that they're appropriately vaccinated and don't have rabies or other zoonotic diseases. If a tick has bitten you, try to preserve the tick after removal in a safe container. Although zoonotic diseases are common, some people are at higher risk of getting them. These individuals may also have more severe reactions and symptoms. If you are one of these individuals at risk, you should seek medical attention immediately if you think you may have a zoonotic disease. High-risk individuals include pregnant women, adults aged 65 or older, children 5 years old or younger, those with HIV, those with cancer who are going through chemotherapy, others with weakened immune systems. It is estimated that, globally, About 1 billion cases of illness and millions of deaths occur every year from zoonoses. Some 60% of emerging infectious diseases that are reported globally are zoonoses. Over 30 new human pathogens have been detected in the last 3 decades, 75% of which have originated in animals. The emerging zoonoses are a growing public health threat in the eastern Mediterranean region of WHO. In the last 2 decades, emerging zoonotic diseases have been reported from 18 out of 22 countries in the region, often with explosive outbreaks and high fatalities never seen in any other WHO region. The recent emergence of MERS-CoV exemplifies that the occurrence of these infections are unpredictable as they originate from animals. Often these infections are caused by novel viruses and are only detected when outbreaks occur. The eastern Mediterranean region of WHO remains particularly prone to zoonotic infections owing to a large number of people in the region living in close proximity to animals, increased volume of international trade, including transboundary mass population and livestock movement within neighboring countries. As the region remains at the crossroad of repeated outbreaks from emerging infectious diseases, international travel to and from the region, either due to tourism, business or religious reasons, globalization and variable levels of health systems' capacity to early detect epidemics have been identified as significant risk factors for emergence and rapid international spread of infectious diseases with zoonotic origin. Varying levels of surveillance and response capacity of the countries at the animal-human interface have often exacerbated these outbreaks. Why do the zoonotic infections matter? An observation of the trend of these zoonotic diseases is that new pathogens from animals, particularly viruses, remain unpredictable and continue to emerge and spread across the countries. The diseases are also a concern to global health owing to their epidemic potential, high case fatality ratio and the absence of specific treatment and vaccines available to control the spread of most of these zoonotic diseases, with the exception of the yellow fever vaccine. Therefore, zoonotic diseases can have a devastating impact with severe economic consequences for the countries through the loss of trade, tourism and consumer confidence. Just to give an example how zoonosis can adversely impact the economy of a country, the emergence of SARS in 2003 has cost the world economy over £40 billion on account of medical treatment and loss of revenue associated with an abrupt halt of the tourism industry. Challenges of managing zoonotic infections. Globalization has resulted in the unparalleled passage of people, animals and goods across national borders, which in turn has fueled the international spread of zoonotic infections. Many of the zoonoses are transboundary diseases. They spread across borders from their origin, to impact on trade, commerce, tourism and consumer confidence with devastating economic consequences. The detection and diagnosis of the disease has been considerably delayed due to difficulties in deploying teams for field investigation, lack of appropriate and safe sample shipment mechanism, lack of appropriate laboratory diagnostic facilities on site or in country, and insufficient capacities of the countries to plan, mobilize and implement appropriate control measures in such settings and to monitor the progress of control measures in geographically dispersed areas. Other challenges. Many viral pathogens causing emerging zoonotic infections in humans originated from animals, specifically wildlife, or from products of animal origin. Knowledge of extra-human reservoirs of these pathogens remains essential for understanding the epidemiology and potential control measures of these zoonotic diseases. There is also inadequate transparency regarding timely reporting of emerging zoonotic infections to WHO or any other international agency that is mandated to investigate and respond appropriately for global health security. Often medical authorities in the countries deny the existence of human cases, making it difficult for these agencies to understand the epidemiology, disease progression. The other challenges of prevention and control of zoonotic diseases include weak surveillance and reporting systems and limited capacity for laboratory diagnosis of emerging zoonotic diseases such as SARS, Ebola, Marburg, and new strains of influenza. Response capacity at the local level is limited in most countries due to lack of awareness, inadequate supplies and human resource quality and quantities. There are difficulties in obtaining accurate and current information and reports on zoonotic disease situations because of the inability to obtain quality information from the grassroots level and inadequate communication between ministries of health and agriculture, veterinary services. In addition, there is limited harmonization of the various regulatory public health frameworks. Research on new emerging diseases is limited or absent. Upcoming perspectives. The region is now an emerging focus for global health after the discovery of MERS-CoV. The region has borne the brunt of several emerging zoonotic infections. The lessons of our present time are that emerging zoonotic infections are unexpected and unpredictable events. Another lesson that has been learned is that any disease outbreak anywhere today could be a problem for the world tomorrow. These novel diseases will continue to confront and challenge the national health authorities' resilience and responsiveness to respond in a timely manner. While the global efforts should continue to fill the current gaps in knowledge associated with the origin and transmission of many zoonotic infections, much of which are novel in origin, much greater regional cooperation would be needed to protect the health of the people from all types of zoonotic infections. Tetanus. The same vaccine that defends against pertussis, Tdap, can also protect you from tetanus, an infection caused by the bacteria Clostridium tetani. Once in the body, C. tetani produce a toxin that causes painful muscle contractions. The neck and jaw are usually the first parts of the body affected by the disease, leading to tetanus, other name, lockjaw. The bacteria that cause tetanus enter through the skin but live in dirt or soil, as well as stuff lying around in the dirt, like rusty nails, and on the intestines of animals and people. Meningitis. Meningitis refers to inflammation of the meninges or the membranes that cover the brain and spinal cord. This infectious disease can be caused by a number of things, including fungi, viruses and bacteria. Bacterial and viral meningitis are the most common types and can be spread from person to person. Whereas bacterial meningitis is often spread through kissing, viral meningitis is typically spread when someone comes into contact with the feces of an infected person, i.e. when changing a diaper or when a person doesn't wash his or her hands properly after using the toilet. Some people get meningitis after suffering a head injury, having brain surgery or having certain kinds of cancer. This type of meningitis is not contagious, nor is fungal meningitis, which was responsible for a meningitis outbreak in 2012. Syphilis. Syphilis is caused by Treponema pallidum, a spiral-shaped bacterium. Syphilis is a sexually transmitted disease which in the first stage, sores may appear on a person's genitals or anus. Usually, these sores are small and painless, and they heal on their own, leading many people to simply overlook them or confuse them with ingrown hairs or blemishes. The second stage of the disease is more noticeable and usually begins with a rash on one or more parts of the body. Sometimes these rashes can be very faint, and since they don't itch, people infected with the disease might not know they have it. Others may develop more severe symptoms such as fever, swollen lymph glands and muscle aches. If syphilis is left untreated throughout the first and second stages of the illness, it can cause much more severe problems later on. Late-stage symptoms include difficulty coordinating muscle movements, paralysis, numbness, blindness and dementia. The disease can also damage internal organs, which may result in death. SARS. Coronaviruses, the family of viruses to which SARS belongs, are a group of viruses that have a crown-like, corona, appearance when viewed under an electron microscope. Severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS, is the virus behind the 2002 and 2003 pandemic that killed more than 750 people worldwide. SARS is spread to people by bats, much like Ebola viruses, Marburg virus and MERS. The SARS virus likely originated in horseshoe bats in China, according to the National Institutes of Health. SARS is spread to people by bats, much like Ebola viruses, Marburg virus and MERS. The SARS virus likely originated in horseshoe bats in China, according to the National Institutes of Health. SARS is characterized by high fever, dry cough, shortness of breath and pneumonia, according to the WHO. Measles. One of the most contagious of all infectious diseases, measles, also called rubeola, causes a characteristic red rash on the skin. Other symptoms of this viral disease are similar to that of the common cold. Measles is so contagious that 90% of the people who simply stand near someone with the virus will become infected. Out of every 1,000 people vaccinated against measles, 997 will never get the disease. Zika. First identified in Africa in 1947, the Zika virus is a flavivirus spread by mosquitoes in the Aedes genus. While the disease caused by Zika virus isn't particularly dangerous for most people, it can cause serious complications for fetuses and newborns. Only 1 in 5 people infected with the virus becomes ill. Ebola. The rare Ebola virus disease, EVD, is an often fatal infection caused by one of the 5 strains of the Ebola virus. The virus spreads very rapidly, overcoming the body's immune response and causing fever, muscle pain, headaches, weakness, diarrhea, vomiting and abdominal pain. Some who contract Ebola also bleed from the nose and mouth in the late stages of the disease, a condition known as a hemorrhagic syndrome. The most recent outbreak of Ebola began in West Africa in 2014 and is now considered the largest such outbreak in history. As of April 2016, approximately 11,300 people had died in the outbreak, with 28,652 suspected and confirmed cases of the virus reported. The Ebola virus is spread from person to person through bodily fluids, and a healthy person can contract the virus by coming into contact with an infected person's blood or secretions or by touching surfaces, like clothing or bedding, containing these fluids. Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, MERS. Just when you thought fruit bats belonging to the Pteropodidae family couldn't possibly get any worse, it turns out they can. These large-eyed, fruit-eating bats are also a host for Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS, a viral respiratory disease that was first identified in 2012 in Saudi Arabia. People with the MERS coronavirus, MERS-CoV, develop severe respiratory illness, including fever, cough and shortness of breath. The disease is often fatal, according to scientists. Dengue. Mosquito-borne viruses, of which dengue is one of many, kill an estimated 50,000 people worldwide every year, according to the WHO. Malaria isn't included in that estimate because it's caused by a parasite, not a virus. Dengue, pronounced dengue, is a disease that can be caused by one of 4 related viruses, Ding1, Ding2, Ding3 and Ding4. Mosquitoes, usually the species Aedes aegypti, shown here, but sometimes A. albopictus, spread the disease from one person to the next. It's not possible for people to catch dengue from one another. People with the disease typically experience flu-like symptoms. Sometimes the virus leads to a potentially lethal complication known as severe dengue or dengue hemorrhagic fever, with symptoms that include fever, abdominal pain, vomiting, bleeding and trouble breathing, according to the WHO. Yellow fever. Like dengue, yellow fever is a type of flavivirus family, and it's spread from one person to the next by mosquitoes in the genuses Aedes and Hemigoggus. The disease gets its name from a symptom experienced by a small percentage of infected patients, jaundice, or yellowing of the skin and eyes. The small percentage of patients who do develop such symptoms are those who enter a second, more toxic, phase of the disease that affects their body systems, including the liver and kidneys. Half of the patients who enter the toxic phase of yellow fever die within 7 to 10 days, according to the WHO. Luckily for those living and traveling in one of the 47 countries in Central America, South America and Africa where yellow fever is endemic, there is a highly effective vaccine against the disease. That was not the case in the 17th century when yellow fever was first transported to North America and Europe, where it caused massive outbreaks and, in some cases, decimated populations, according to the WHO. Hantaviruses. Hantaviruses are spread to humans by rodents, particularly mice and rats. People can become infected with a hantavirus if they come into direct contact with the bodily secretions of these animals or if they breathe in virus-carrying particles from those secretions that have become aerosolized. Anthrax. You might be familiar with anthrax from the anthrax attacks in September 2001 in the US, which killed 5 people and sickened 17, and which collectively are considered the worst biological attack in US history. Anthrax is an infectious disease caused by the bacterium Bacillus anthracis, which lives in soil and usually infects wild and domestic animals, such as goats, cattle and sheep. Humans usually get the disease when they handle infected livestock or animal products. Though you can get anthrax when bacteria spores enter your skin, those who work with animal hides or wool that may be infected with anthrax are also susceptible to inhaling B. anthracis.